The Golden Secret, Part 1. It started as an ordinary morning in Ghana. The sun had barely risen when the first reports hit the airwaves. An entire village, wiped out in an explosion of unimaginable scale. The government called it a freak accident. A truck carrying industrial explosives, meant for mining operations in the region, had detonated in the middle of Abena, a small but defiant town that had long resisted evacuation. By midday, every radio station, television broadcast, and social media platform in the country was flooded with disturbing images, charred remains of buildings, lifeless bodies covered in soot, and a thick, dark cloud of smoke still rising from the wreckage. It was being called the worst mining disaster in Ghana's history. Government officials were quick to respond. Survivors were whisked away in military trucks, relocated to undisclosed locations. Within hours, security forces sealed off Abena. No journalists, no civilians, no one was allowed near the site. To the public, it was a tragedy. But to Abena Asare, a journalist whose career was hanging by a thread, something about the whole situation smelled rotten. Abena sat at her desk in the dimly lit newsroom of the Daily Echo, her fingers drumming impatiently on the wood. She was on the verge of losing her job. Once regarded as one of Ghana's most promising investigative journalists, she had spent the past year chasing dead ends. No exclusives, no groundbreaking stories, just stale reports that barely made the headlines. Her editor, Eve.But, had made it clear. "Abena, if you don't bring me something big in the next 2 weeks, you're out." She had been scrolling through the Abena explosion reports all day, reading and rereading the government statements. Something wasn't adding up. The official story claimed the truck's brakes had failed, causing it to crash into a fuel station before igniting the massive explosion. But that explanation felt convenient. Just a month ago, the people of Abena had refused to leave their land, despite intense pressure from a foreign mining company and the government. Now, they were all gone. The land, rich in gold, was suddenly empty. Abena exhaled sharply and was about to shut her laptop when her phone buzzed. A blocked number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello." The voice on the other end was low and hurried. "Miss Asare, you don't know me, but I know you're looking for the truth about Abena." Abena's pulse quickened. "Who is this?" "I can't say. But listen to me carefully. The explosion, it wasn't an accident. I have proof. A recording. Everything." Abena gripped her phone tighter. This was it, the story she had been waiting for. "Where can we meet?" she asked. "I'll call you back with the location," the voice replied. Then the line went dead. Abena barely slept that night, her mind racing with possibilities. The next morning, she waited anxiously for the call. But it never came. Instead, news broke that a company employee, a site engineer for the mining project, had been reported missing. Abena's stomach twisted. Was he the one who had called her? Acting on instinct, she did what she did best, she dug deeper. She searched the missing man's name, Daniel Osei. A mid-level engineer at Golden Rock Mining Ltd., the foreign company pushing to mine Abena. If he had evidence of foul play, he had every reason to disappear, or worse, be silenced. She drove straight to his listed address, a small apartment on the outskirts of Accra. The door was ajar. Her heart pounded as she stepped inside. The place had been ransacked. Drawers overturned, papers scattered across the floor. Whoever had been here was looking for something. Then she saw it, a small, black flash drive lying under the desk. Carefully, she picked it up and slipped it into her pocket. That was when she heard the sound of approaching footsteps. Abena didn't wait to find out who was coming. She bolted out of the apartment, sprinting towards her car. Behind her, Two men in black suits emerged from the shadows. One of them shouted, "Hey! Stop!" Abena flung herself into the driver's seat and turned the ignition. The engine roared to life. She slammed the accelerator, the tires screeching against the pavement. In the rearview mirror, she saw them jump into a black SUV. They were following her. Her hands tightened around the steering wheel as she weaved through traffic, her mind racing. Who were they? Government operatives? Company enforcers? One thing was clear, they wanted the flash drive. She needed to disappear. Abena didn't go home. It was too risky. Instead, she drove to the one place where no one would look for her, her uncle's abandoned fishing hut near the Volta River. She locked the doors, pulled the curtains shut, and plugged the flash drive into her laptop. A single audio file popped up. She pressed play. At first, there was only static. Then, voices. "This needs to happen before the month ends," a man said. His voice was deep, authoritative. "We need the land cleared. By any means necessary." A second voice spoke. It was a government official. She recognized the tone, the careful phrasing. "An explosion that size will raise questions." "Not if we control the narrative," the first voice replied. "We say it was an accident. Move the survivors. Seal off the town. By the time anyone suspects anything, the mine will be operational." Abena's blood ran cold. She had proof. Solid proof. This wasn't an accident. It was murder. She shut the laptop, her heart hammering. She needed to publish this. But first, she had to survive the night. Somewhere outside, a car slowed down near the hut. She wasn't alone. If you are enjoying this story, please support us by subscribing, like and comment. Thank you. Abena's breath hitched as the sound of car tires crunching against gravel reached her ears. She crouched near the window, barely lifting the curtain. A black SUV had stopped outside the fishing hut. The same men from before. Her mind raced. How had they found her so fast? She needed to get out. Moving swiftly, she grabbed her laptop, tucked the flash drive into her bra, and slipped out through the back door. The hut was near the Volta River. If she could reach the water, she might be able to lose them. A low voice barked orders. "Check inside. She's here." She ran. Her feet pounded against the soft earth as she sprinted toward the riverbank. The sound of boots crunching behind her sent panic through her veins. They were close. A single gunshot cracked through the air. A tree trunk splintered beside her. "They're shooting at me." Abena's heart slammed against her ribs as she dived into the river. The cold water closed over her head, muffling the sounds of her pursuers. She kicked hard, propelling herself downstream. When she resurfaced, she caught a glimpse of the men standing at the bank, scanning the water with flashlights. "Find her. Now," one of them barked. Abena didn't wait to hear more. She let the current carry her deeper into the night. By dawn, Abena was shivering on the outskirts of Kita, a quiet coastal town. She had managed to drag herself out of the river hours ago, her clothes soaked, her body exhausted. She had to think fast. The flash drive was damning, but it wasn't enough. She needed more: documents, names, bank records, something that could expose both the government and Golden Rock Mining Ltd. And she knew exactly who could help her. There was only one journalist in Ghana fearless enough to take on powerful men and live to tell the story: Kojo Mensah. Kojo was a former investigative journalist turned ghost. Years ago, he had uncovered a scandal involving corrupt ministers and barely escaped with his life. Since then, he had been living off the grid, helping reporters like Abena when the government turned against them. She found an old number in her contacts and sent a single message. I have something big. I need your help. Minutes later, her phone vibrated. The reply. Meet me at the old railway station. Midnight. Come alone. At exactly 11:55 p.m., Abena arrived at the abandoned railway station in Tima. The air was thick with humidity, the only sounds coming from distant waves crashing against the shore. She waited. A shadow moved near the rusted train tracks. Abena? She turned to see Kojo, a man in his early 40s, his once sharp features worn by years of hiding. You still have a way of finding trouble, he said, smirking. I have proof that Abujua was destroyed on purpose. But I need more, bank transactions, official documents, names. Kojo sighed. You always aim for the head, don't you? He pulled out a notepad. There's a warehouse in Tokorodi. Golden Rock Mining uses it as a storage facility, but I have reason to believe they keep records there. If we can get inside, we might find what you're looking for. Abena nodded. Then let's do it. Kojo frowned. This won't be easy. These men don't just steal land, they kill for it. And if they know you have that flash drive, you're already a dead woman walking. Before Abena could respond, the night was shattered by headlights. 3 black SUVs screeched to a stop. Run! Kojo yelled. Bullets tore through the silence. Abena dived behind a concrete pillar, her heart hammering. They had been set up. She watched as Kojo fired back with a concealed pistol, hitting one of the approaching men. But there were too many of them. Go! Get to the evidence! Kojo shouted before he was tackled to the ground. Abena clenched her jaw. She wanted to help, but staying would mean both of them would die. With one last look at Kojo, she turned and ran into the night. Abena knew she had to move fast. She stole a motorcycle from a nearby alley and sped toward Tokorodi, the sea breeze whipping against her face. By dawn, she was crouched outside the warehouse Kojo had mentioned, watching security patrols move in and out. She took a deep breath. No turning back now. She slipped inside through an unlocked window, moving cautiously through the dimly lit corridors. Rows of metal filing cabinets lined the walls. She searched quickly, pulling out folders. Then she found it, a ledger marked, Project Black Dust. Her hands shook as she flipped through the pages. Names. Dates. Transactions. The document detailed bribes paid to government officials, orders for explosive materials, and even the exact date of the accident. She grabbed her phone to take pictures. But before she could, the sound of heavy footsteps made her freeze. Someone was coming. She shoved the ledger into her bag and ducked behind a shelf just as 2 men walked in. We need to move everything tonight, one of them said. What about the journalist? She won't be a problem for much longer. Abena's blood ran cold. They were talking about her. She waited until they left before creeping toward the exit. But as she reached the door, her foot hit a loose piece of metal. The noise echoed through the room. A flashlight swung in her direction. Hey! Stop! Abena sprinted, pushing through crates as gunfire erupted behind her. She burst through a side door, leaping onto the first vehicle she saw, a parked truck. She hot-wired the engine, sending it roaring to life. The guards were close, running toward her with their guns raised. She floored the accelerator. The truck smashed through the warehouse gates, tearing down fences as bullets pinged against the metal. Abena didn't stop. Not until she was miles away. She had the evidence. But now, they knew she wouldn't stop digging. And they would never stop hunting her. Please subscribe, like and comment. Thank Abena drove through the night, the stolen truck rattling over potholes as she neared Accra. She had the evidence, the ledger from Golden Rock Mining Limited with signed documents, detailing bribes and orders for the explosive materials that destroyed Abuja. It was enough to expose the individuals behind the massacre. But she was also being hunted. Her phone buzzed in the passenger seat. A private number. She hesitated before answering. "Miss Asare, you have something that does not belong to you." The voice was deep, smooth, and calm. "Who is this?" "Someone who can make this all go away. Hand over the documents, and you'll live to see another day." Abena's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "I'm not scared of you." A chuckle. "You should be." Then the call ended. She knew what it meant, they were coming. By morning, Abena was sitting in Kojo Mensah's hidden safe house, going through the files. Kojo had survived the ambush, bruised but alive. Now, together, they laid everything out. "This is huge," Kojo muttered, shaking his head. "But if we publish this, we won't make it out alive." "Then we need leverage," Abena said. She grabbed her phone and made a risky call to an old college friend, Otto Nyako, who now worked in the president's office. "Otto, I have something explosive. But I need the government to listen before I go public." There was silence. Then a low sigh. "Meet me at the press club at noon," Otto said. "And Abena, be careful." At exactly 12 p.m., Abena and Kojo entered the press club, a private bar often used by journalists and government officials for off-the-record conversations. Otto was already waiting, looking nervous. "You have no idea what you've stepped into, Abena," he muttered. "This is bigger than you think." Abena pulled out the ledger and placed it on the table. "I know exactly what I've stepped into," she said. Otto flipped through the pages, his face paling. "These are signatures from high-ranking officials," he whispered. "Ministers. CEOs. Even." He stopped, looking around before lowering his voice. "Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, Dr. Richard Asamoah. He signed off on the explosives shipment." Abena's stomach churned. Dr. Asamoah was one of the president's closest allies. Otto flipped to another page. "And here, this is Kwame Ofori, the regional director of Golden Rock Mining Limited. He personally ordered the removal of the Abuja residents before the explosion." Abena exhaled slowly. They finally had names. "You have to tell the president," she said. Otto hesitated. "The government will not go down with this scandal," he finally said. "If we make the evidence public, they'll treat you as an enemy of the state." Abena knew he was right. "So what's the alternative?" Kojo asked. Otto leaned forward. "Give us the documents. Let the government handle this quietly. In exchange, you walk away free, and you get to release the story, but only after the real culprits have been punished." It was a gamble. But Abena knew she couldn't fight both the government and a multinational corporation alone. "Deal," she said. 2 weeks later, the nation woke up to shocking news. Dr. Richard Asamoah, Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, had been arrested by the Bureau of National Investigations, BNI, for his role in authorizing illegal mining operations and his involvement in the Abuja explosion cover-up. Kwame Ofori, the corrupt regional director of Golden Rock Mining Limited, had also been detained after attempting to flee the country. The government, in an official statement, condemned the actions of these individuals, insisting that they had acted alone in their greed and deception. The president distanced himself from the scandal, vowing full cooperation with investigators. Golden Rock Mining Limited, desperate to salvage its reputation, also released a statement firing Ofori and other executives linked to the illegal activities. Within a month, the court sentenced both men to life imprisonment for conspiracy, corruption, and mass murder. Justice had been served. But the real victory belonged to Abena. Abena's story, titled The Golden Secret, How Greed Destroyed a Village, became the most read investigative article in Ghana's history. She received international recognition, and news agencies across the world praised her courage. The Daily Echo, the newspaper that once considered firing her, offered her a promotion and a permanent column. But Abena had other plans. 1 year later, she founded her own investigative media outlet, Truth Watch Ghana, dedicated to exposing corruption and fighting for the people's voice. And as she stood in her new office, staring at the framed article that had changed everything, she smiled. She had risked her life for the truth. And the truth had finally won. The end.